welcome to the Ground and Pwn Podcast, a weekly show for fans of combat sports, gaming, entertainment, and plenty more. I'm Brian Shea, online content director at Game Informer, joined by Scott Fontana, the New York Post's MMA reporter. It was actually a pretty low-key week in both gaming and MMA thanks to the Thanksgiving holiday here in the States. But we do have a giant event, the PFL pay-per-view, the World Championship to chat about. Plus, we'll have UFC Orlando to preview. But first, Scott, how are you doing? How was your Thanksgiving?
Well, as you know, and our listeners are going to find out now, is I'm getting over a kind of a nasty cold, flu, whatever it was, that basically cast a pall over my entire Thanksgiving holiday / weekend. So it was kind of a rough one.
Did you at least get like any kind of good food or even some gaming downtime?
I mean, I found time to game. I would say that, and it is funny because so I had to work first off through this because we were so short staffed and it was a holiday and I was already scheduled, so I had to work through the two toughest days that I had health wise.
Yikes.
Not that someone said, hey, you have to work, but I knew I had to work. There just wasn't enough personnel to make up for my loss. So I just said, okay, I'm working through it. I ended up I took a sick day Saturday to recover because I still wasn't right. And I knew I needed at least a day to let my body not be pushed to the limit. And that helped put me on the mend. But anyway, there was one thing going back to the gaming. One night after I was working, I had slept like most of the day away before work because I was basically just trying to get my body ready for those 8 hours. And so after I was done working, and I'm never ready to go to bed right after work anyway, no matter how late it is. So I go upstairs and I go play some God of War. I had, with keeping it spoiler free, I had one of the last, and it was actually for me, it was my last end game boss to fight.
Okay.
And so I'm battling this boss, and mind you, I'm having coughing fits like throughout the night. Everything I'm doing is just coughing.
Which isn't frustrating at all.
Not at all. Not even a little. But as I'm playing the game, I don't know what it is that my body did, but it's almost like, okay, you're gaming, like your body's going to just shut the part off that was bothering you about coughing. And as long as I was sitting there in that couple minute stretch trying to beat the boss, it was calm. I wasn't coughing. It was very weird. And then I would even think about it and I'm like, I'm not coughing. That's strange. But it wasn't being aware it wasn't turning it on either because I was still in the mode. But then once I beat it and I kind of moved on to things that were less intensive, I was having my coughing again. So it was almost like my body just buckled in and it's like, all right, you're going to do this.
Couldn't do that while you're trying to sleep.
No, honestly, I did sleep well enough while I was asleep. Okay. So I did okay there. It's just, most of the agonizing other hours of the night and day.
It is so annoying when you were trying to focus on something like a difficult boss battle or, like sleeping or working or something, and your body just won't let you stop coughing. It's just absurdly frustrating because it's not like you're just calmly just coughing. You are just constantly just your body is shaking,
Yeah.
And it's rough.
It is rough. But my body's powering through. Everyone else in my house got sick now as well, which is unfortunate. But so now, even as I would put my health at somewhere in the 80-ish% range, okay, as my health bar is moving back up.
So as a result, your voice is a little deeper, we'll say. It's a little more bass today than typical, but it just in case it does cut out, the listeners know why your voice is a little bit off this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully I will be able to avoid any sort of coughing fits on the air. We'll see what we can do there. But how was your Thanksgiving? I should before I kick it to you. Actually, I will say the one thing that, and my body kind of cooperated for this part of it, was we were planning to take the kids to my office at the News Corp building.
Mm-hmm.
to watch the St. Patrick's, the Thanksgiving
we
Day
do things
parade.
differently in New York.
Yeah, we do the holidays when we feel like it. Deal with it. Now the Thanksgiving Day parade with all the balloons, the Macy's one, we watched those walk right past the building from the 10th floor. And it was really cool. It was like, we'd been planning to do this. We wanted to do it last year, but COVID protocols meant it was harder to get guests in the building. So this year, everything was normal again. We were finally able to do it. And yeah, I mean, we had a nice time. My body really kind of did cooperate through that. And then after that, I was like, it was just all downhill, but we had a good time with that.
What was the best part of the parade? Being there in person?
I guess, I mean, other than, of course, in watching my kids have a good time with it, which was really, that's the highlight. When you're a parent, that's kind of where it is, right?
Sure.
But for me personally, I don't know. I mean, just seeing the balloons being there was pretty cool, because I always liked the parade, like watching those balloons on TV, but I also hate parades in general because I don't like standing around outside watching things go by. But I will say, watching it from a nice office building floor, much better. That's the way to watch a parade.
What was that? Who was it? It might have been Dimitri Martin, the comedian, who said that, like, if you want to watch a parade, just walk in the opposite direction. And it's like watching it in fast forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds right.
It's a good way to go about it, because parades, I feel like parades are a relic of a bygone era when we didn't have the internet or even like TV. It's like, hey, what are you doing today? Oh, there's a parade. We got to go. It's like, now it's like, you want to go to the parade? And you're like, not really.
Parades are like, especially the ones in your local town, like they're great for certain things. Like there was like a holiday parade on Saturday, which nobody was feeling up to health wise, of course, in my house. But my son would have been marching in it with the Cub Scouts. So, or I guess they're still called the Cub Scouts. It's when they go on, they're called BSA. Yeah, it's just the Scouts.
Once they get the arrow of light and they graduate from being Weeblos.
Yes, Weebelows.
Weebelows. Yeah, I was a Weebelo.
I did that one. I got my arrow of light, and then I was done.
Yeah, it's exactly how I went. I was in Cub Scouts for however many years you're in Cub Scouts, and then went to one Boy Scout meeting after I got the arrow of light, and I was just like, yeah, not for me. Sorry, guys. That was my exact path. But yeah, so like, if you have a family member in a parade, that's exciting. You watch them go by, they get a little bit of sun, time in the sun, and then that's about it. But like, yeah, if you just like watch, like I'll go to the St. Patrick's Day parade with my wife and her family sometimes, because they're big on it. They're big Irish Americans in Brooklyn, and so I'll go to this parade, and I'm like, what's so special? It's just not. It's not my thing. Like, you know what? You do you, but it's not my thing. Exactly. And I retweeted something where somebody was like, hey, like, all these years of Pokemon and I still don't understand the appeal. And somebody responded, it's like, well, it's not on you you're not put on this earth to understand why people like other things. Just enjoy your life and live your life. And I'm just like, you know what? Good advice.
See, I would feel that way about parades, especially this St. Patrick's parade, if I didn't have to go to it.
That's very true.
Because no one's making that guy play Pokemon.
It's the same thing with like when I was watching the St. Patrick's Day parade, God, now you got me saying it. I was watching the Thanksgiving parade. My parents came into town, so I had a nice family Thanksgiving, which was nice.
Good.
But my parents came into town. My mom really wanted to watch the Thanksgiving parade. So we're watching that, and she kept saying, like, going back, this ties into your thing about how, like, if like a family member is in the parade, because there was like all those marching bands and like baton twirlers and everything.
Sure.
And they kept like glancing over. They'd get like 5 seconds on screen, and then they'd go on to like the next parade float, right? And my mom's like, "Oh, I feel bad for all these people that like these are like their family members." And I looked at her and I go, "Fast forward through this. Let's just get to the celebrities and the singing people. Show me the Pikachu float."
Yeah. I will say that was another thing that was kind of unique, was like you really got to see everything come by like at the pace it was supposed to go. Like it wasn't a TV broadcast. It was like, okay, you're really just watching these things. So like, and sometimes it would stop, and I'm sure there was a reason. Maybe someone was performing, maybe they just had an issue. So some things would just kind of sit in front of you for a little bit, and you got to get to look at the, whether it was the balloon or there was a marching band or something like that. It was like kind of cool to watch it. a little longer. I always loved the Stay Puft Marshmallow, or not the Stay Puft Marshmallow, man. I keep saying that.
That's the guy that destroyed New York.
Poppin' Fresh from Pillsbury.
Is that what his name is?
Poppin' Fresh. I think that's
the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Yeah, isn't it Poppin' Fresh?
I have no idea. I've just always called him the Pillsbury Doughboy. I didn't even know he had a name.
I think he has a name.
I thought he was a nameless soldier in this war of brands.
His name is Poppin' Fresh. P-O-P-P-I-N
the guy that you touch his belly and he
apostrophe Fresh.
Are we talking about the same guy?
Pillsbury Doughboy. Google Poppin' with an apostrophe, like popping, but poppin'. Fresh.
This is earth shattering.
Oh yeah, I've known this a long time though. This isn't new.
This has changed my entire perspective on the world. But so you played
God
of War Ragnarok. You played God of War Ragnarok. Let's get into some gaming here.
Yeah,
I don't know if I can't tolerate this any further.
I don't know how many more. We already lost most of our listeners. It's okay.
God of War Ragnarok. What else?
Well, I mean, shoot, I think we got to talk a little more about God of War Ragnarok. We didn't really get to talk about it.
Yeah, because I was also playing it over the course of a break, or at least when I had what little gaming time I had, because my parents were actually staying here with me in my house. So I would have like an hour of gaming time if I wasn't exhausted from all the stuff we were doing together by the time they went to bed. So normally I actually would just come down to my basement and play something else, because I was like, well, if I get into God of War Ragnarok, I'm going to want to play for more than like an hour.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those games that you play in like a session as opposed to just like hit it and quit it.
So like one night I played like Street Fighter V, and that was really fun. Or I just open up my phone and play. I got really into Marvel Snap over the break, which is the mobile like Marvel card battler. Okay, that's really fun. That's one of my favorite games of the year, actually. At this point,
you and I need to play Street Fighter V, though. By the way,
yeah, we do. I realize how rusty I am though after playing through the arcade mode a couple of times. Good God, I really need to brush up on my skills before 6 hits. Like I was watching on Game Informer, we actually got Capcom to send us some video footage of 2 of their best like players on their development team playing against each other. And I was watching that right before we started recording, and I was like, dude, these guys are just next level. Like how good they are. Oh
yeah, it's not fair how much better people who are like good at the game, and then not just good, but then there's like obviously the levels to it.
Yeah, cool. I know one of them actually has competed at Evo. And so like a competitive, like professional level player. And it's like, yeah.
It's like playing basketball with Kyrie Irving. Like,
yeah, I might touch the ball for like 10 seconds total, because he's either going to just breeze right past me to the hoop or steal the ball immediately.
Basically, anything you do in the game is because it was permitted.
And then he'll probably call you some sort of slur on the way out.
Yeah, I picked the wrong player.
You really did.
Anyway, we can move back to God of War.
Yeah,
Ragnarok. But you didn't. I know you're not that far yet, but like, where do you stand with kind of your thoughts on the game? I think you said you're probably, let's say, early on in the main quest.
Yes, I'm very early on. I'm not going to say where I am for the sake of spoilers, but I told you before we started recording where I am. So I'm still fairly early, but I've been doing a lot of the side quests. I don't know if I've done 100% of them, because I feel like, but I have every chance that I've seen where like the path branches off, I go and explore that path. And like, I found a couple of like the Draugr holes or pits or whatever, like there's like a mini boss basically in there. And those are really fun because I enjoy like a semi-challenging, but not like, this is going to make me throw my controller up against the wall type of.
Yeah, it's kind of, those are like mid-level boss fights. They're not like the Valkyries kind of level. There are some that are like that along the way that you'll encounter. I will spoil nothing, but I've actually completed, and I think I don't remember if I'd said it on air or if we were just saying it before, but I have beaten the main quest. I have platinumed the game. And then I just cleaned up to get 100% of literally everything in the game too. Because you don't have to 100% the game to platinum it. You get pretty close, but you don't actually have to 100% it. But there's not that much. So I was like, all right, I'll go back and clean it up. Because ultimately, there's no new game plus, but I am preparing as if there will be. Where there will be. So that I wanted to have everything.
It's so weird there's no new game plus, given like how much people loved it in the first one. I guess the first one, it was a post-release patch as well.
This is the pattern from Sony. I think they did the same thing with Spider-Man as well.
You'd think that like they would have been like, all right, well, we know that people like New Game Plus. Let's just keep it there so that way people can jump right back in after they play through it. But whatever.
My guess is they want to extend the longevity of the game and the news cycle of the game, because if they put it out all at one time, they can't do it again because they're not going to put DLC out. So if they do this in, let's say, February, they say, okay, New Game Plus, now we're all talking about God of War again, and oh my God, how much harder is this fight now? Oh, it's so crazy, like that's they start to get that bump again, and helps their sales. I get it, I understand it.
Let me ask you this again, spoiler free.
Pick my brain as much as you would like to. Now that I've completed everything.
Early on in the game, there is a very cool fight. Is that the coolest fight in the game?
It's one of them. It ranks up there. It's all similar to, the opening fight of the original God of War. I'll try to even manage spoilers of that one too, because it's not that old a game yet. It's still. And
I also feel like a lot of people are seeing all the critical acclaim of God of War Ragnarok and being like, "Oh, I never played God of War 2018. I should go play that first." Yeah,
so I'm going to try and censor myself on that one as well, but. And when you complete the game, by the way, we'll do one of those shows where we'll stick it at the end and we can talk spoiler free or spoiler about it.
Yeah.
But for this one, I think it's probably similar to that game in the sense that, both of the opening kind of fights, especially when I say opening, I mean like opening hours, major boss fight that you're introduced to are
like, all right, this is the adventure starting essentially.
They get you off to. They build a card right, so they give you the it's kind of like in the fight terms, right? They want to put you in the right mindset, so they'll put a banger on to start the card. When they go to New York last year and they put Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler on to open the card, that was a smart move.
And also, so Trevor Whitman didn't have to coach 3 fights back to back.
Right. It doesn't matter. It still worked out. The thinking was sound nonetheless. It's kind of like that. That's a great way to start. I would say it takes a little while before you have many more big boss fights, but they'll come. And there are some really solid ones, pretty epic ones too. I think they're good.
It's making me want to go back and play God of War 2018 all the way to Ragnarok. It's like
that's kind of what I did.
God, I want to. What was the thing I was recently doing where I was like, this makes me want to rewatch or replay like everything. Oh, I recently rewatched Breaking Bad with my girlfriend.
Okay,
and then I was like, all right, well, let's watch El Camino, which is the sequel movie that they put out several years later. And then now we're watching Better Call Saul. So it's like we're doing the entire saga, basically. And it's like, God, like this is what this is making me want to do. It's making me want to go back and play 2018. But like first I have to get through Ragnarok, obviously.
Of course.
But it's my game of the year so far.
I think you'd only feel more entrenched in that idea the farther you get. And I will say absolutely nothing about why. But it really is just a fantastically crafted game experience. It really like is better. The entire like evolution of the God of War series from what it was, which was something I loved to begin with, but also was not necessarily like the height of storytelling. To not only they changed the combat that everybody loved when they switched over to the PlayStation 4 and switched over to the the Norse mythology setting and that kind of thing. They somehow found a combat system that felt different, but not crazy different, and also in some ways better. They also heavily upgraded the storytelling, and that all of that carries over into this game. And I've seen kind of these like backhanded like compliment things like, oh, it's a PS4 game, or it's extended DLC. I'm like, guys, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want from a game?
It's called a sequel.
It's just a sequel. It's
a sequel. Like you don't want it isn't like a Zelda game where it's like everyone has to be a different format and different gameplay and different visual style. It's like, no, this is a direct sequel to the game that you played 4 years ago.
And from an unabashed Zelda fan, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting Tears of the Kingdom next year, and I would bet, since it's a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, there's going to be a lot of shared elements between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Now, granted, stuff we've seen, looks like they're shaking up the formula more than a traditional direct sequel, but I'm like you see the art style is the same. You see it appears to be the same Link. He has a lot of the same moves. It's like you understand that because it's a direct sequel, it's not going to be as revolutionary as something that changes the entire franchise and flips it up on its head, like we saw with God of War 2018. Like that was a direct sequel that also was like a soft reboot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what you're going to get with a game that they, in 4 years, they're like, all right, well, this is going to be a direct follow-up to this game, a direct continuation. Like it basically starts a few days after the events of 2018. So like, what do they want? Like, I get it. Like people want big changes, but at the same time, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
No, absolutely. And I can tell you that just from my experience, I mostly focused on, story elements when I was playing through my game. I didn't do a whole lot of DLC, or not. When I say DLC, I should say side quests. I didn't do a lot of the side quests or favors, as they call them in the game.
Mm-hmm.
As I was playing, I tried to focus more on kind of getting to the end. You stop and smell the roses here and there, but not for very long, at least in my play. And I want to say it took me it was probably 24-ish hours to beat the main story mode, main story, I should say. And then it was, I got the platinum trophy at 47 hours and 33 minutes.
Wow.
So there's basically like a second. It's like half the game is side quests and half the game is main story.
Okay, so according to how long to beat, main story, 24 hours.
There you go.
And completionist, 49 hours is what they're saying.
Yeah, no, I was definitely 47-33. You know what? When I say completionist, I never know if they mean the platinum trophy, if they mean 100%. Because when I did get 100%, it was probably more like 49 hours.
And then main plus extra is 35 and a half, they're saying.
Oh, okay.
So that's like doing like all the meaningful stuff, I guess, quote unquote.
Or maybe stopping a little more often. I'll bet you that if I was as heavily focused as I could have been on just I want to get to the finish as quick as possible, and I'm not like speed running or something like that. If I'm just like not doing other things, probably could have got it closer to like 23, 22 hours.
Gotcha.
I think that's probably that's like a very quick playthrough of the game is 22 hours. That would be my ballpark.
All right.
But I loved like a lot of the side stuff. I mean, there's a lot to do. Some of the realms you visit, and it's no secret that you're going to visit other realms in this game. They offer a lot more to do in them than when like what you would do for the story purposes. And I don't just mean like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of things. I mean, the realm is bigger. Like there's areas of the realm that the story doesn't touch. You would venture to on your own and find that there's just this whole other area of tons and tons of stuff. It's pretty cool.
And I love that it basically lays out that like, all right, this is a side quest. This is the main story. So like, because I always have that moment where I'm sitting there like, oh God, which path do I take? Which one, like, what's going to like progress the story? I don't want to go that way yet. I want to stay and like do some extra stuff before I leave this completely in the rear view. And like, even the very first time that you have the opportunity to do a side quest, like, Mimir's like, all right, if you want to go do that, like, go left. And then on the right, though, like, I'd love it if you'd help me out with this. And it's like, okay. We're being very clearly defined. This is the main story path if you want to keep going that way, or if you want to help me with a side quest, go right. And like, it's not always that explicit, but like sometimes there'll be a little voice line where it's like Atreus will be like, hey, there's the door that we need to open. And then you'll see like a path and you'll go and he'll be like, but we still need to open that door, right? And Kratos will be like, we will return. And it's like, okay, so I know this is a side quest. I'm not going like down the path of no return.
They do a pretty good job of having the in-game, ambiance, like try to keep you informed of that kind of thing, and sometimes they'll even be helpful in situations if you're struggling.
Oh, they'll be very helpful.
Sometimes they're a little too helpful, I would even say.
You can turn it off now. Like you can go.
Is that right? Okay.
There's a way, but there's no in between. Like I've seen a lot of people complain because I like the hints because like while I enjoy the puzzles, I'm not playing God of War for the puzzles, right? I'm playing it and like I enjoy them, but like if
puzzles
I'm stuck
have been there since the beginning, but you're right, yeah.
If I'm stuck on something for too long, I don't mind if Atreus is like, "Hey, what if you pull that thing over here?"
Sure.
And it's like, yeah, okay, fair enough. I will do that. But
it'd be nice if you could adjust the timer is kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, because right now it's like on or off, like in terms of like NPC hints.
Or if you could turn it off and then like maybe there'd be some sort of input you could do that like triggers them to be like, yo, what would you suggest here?
I think that Uncharted has that because they have in the early days they had the thing of like, hey, why don't you try this, Nate? And I think eventually they had like press up on the D-pad for a hint.
Mm-hmm.
So like you could ask for a hint.
That. That wouldn't be so bad if it was something like that because, yeah, it's only a few times in again almost 50 hours of play did I have them like interject when I thought it was like too early, and I'm like, all right, chill. But there was just a handful of times. Otherwise, I think they do a pretty good job. So I think they'll probably find a better balance. What else are they doing right now? There's no DLC. Like, they're just supporting a game that just came out. I imagine they'll find solutions that'll work better. I have faith in that team.
Oh, yeah. That team has definitely earned your trust, I think, at this
100%.
point.
100%.
What else have you been playing outside of God of War Ragnarok?
I actually did find quite a bit of time because I was kind of just... Some days I wasn't feeling up to doing anything during the daytime, but then there were times where I actually found some time. So
yeah, like there's time, like when you're sick, like there's like the spectrum, and like there is a sweet spot for gaming where it's like I'm not too sick to like look at like moving stuff and use my brain to like do things on the screen, but I'm not good enough to like, or I'm not well enough to stand up and like walk around and like be social or whatever. So like there is a sweet spot for sickness gaming.
And there were times where it wasn't necessarily about like, you know, watching the TV. It was like literally I just didn't feel like doing anything with my hands or anything. Like I just like wanted to sleep or just not do a thing. But anyway, before I got sick, I finally completed Super Mario 3D World.
All right. And you did the bonus worlds or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Those are fun.
Completed that.
Those are really fun. And I love the homages. Were you a Mario Galaxy guy?
Yes.
I love the homages to Mario Galaxy and the bonus worlds.
Big Mario Galaxy guy. I love both of those games, to be honest. They put the first Mario Galaxy in that collection that came out, right? Mario All-Stars.
Yeah. Why didn't they put both?
I know.
So
I'm kind of furious about this, to be perfectly honest, but that's another tangent.
Furious.
I don't want to even go down that route because it does make me mad. But anyway, Bowser's Fury, talking about being furious. I started that one as well. And I would say I'm like a little more than halfway through. I think there's like 100 of the cat shines you got to collect. I think I got about 50-ish.
It's been a year since I've played it. So yeah, it's somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah, I'll tell you that. But yeah, so I've been playing that. That is surprising. I mean, I heard great things, but I'm like, I didn't really know what to expect. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. It definitely feels like an extension of kind of the Mario Odyssey type of feel in a lot of ways. But it adds like the wrinkle of, you know, when you have to get, you know, fight Bowser. Like those are
really cool. And I love that there's
like a kaiju battle.
It is. And I love that there's like ways you can trick him into opening areas that you couldn't otherwise get into. Like, have you stumbled upon those where it's like, here's like bricks that only Bowser's attack can break, and that'll open up the thing so you can get additional stuff, whether it's power-ups or another shine or whatever.
And I find that I will strategically like wait by there if I know the rain is going to be starting soon and he's going to be coming out, because I'll just be like, all right, I'm going to wait by here, he'll break it, and then I'll get my cat shine, and then it'll, you know, because when you do light the lighthouse and Bowser's out, it does just a little bit of damage to him, which I don't think really matters in the grand scheme, because like you're really just kind of trying to bash his belly, but nonetheless, like it's like might as well.
Also, how badass is the way it just slowly starts to rain, and then the storm clouds start creeping in, the music gets more ominous, Bowser grows into his massive form, and then it's just like all out metal guitar riffs until he goes away. Like I think
it definitely doesn't feel like your typical Mario experience, that's for sure.
But you
can even watch, like if you just sit there and watch Bowser, like all the way from calm up to when he pops out, there's different stages. Like there's a ton of stages to it too, and a lot of them are even just subtle. It's not just like, oh, now he's about to do it. There's a gradual growth to it. It's kind of cool.
Mario, Nintendo is so good at like the small attention to details, right? Like even looking back at like Mario Odyssey, something like that, where there's just so many tiny little nods and like animations and everything to kind of give you that little attention to detail that just makes it that much more of a special experience. Like a new Mario game is always a special experience because it doesn't happen very often and they're always good. But it's like just a little bit more of an occasion, I feel like, because of that attention to detail.
You know what's cool about having children though is that every new experience, every experience is a new experience.
Yeah.
So I brought out for them this week Super Mario World.
One of my favorite games of all time.
Super Nintendo, yeah, one of my favorites as well, sir.
My pick for the best Mario game.
I would agree. I'm with you.
All right.
Team Super Mario World. But anyway, so I wanted to show them because they're not huge gamers, I would say. You know, like they don't play really, but they kind of like watching me play. And you know, I think ultimately they will probably get into it, especially my youngest. I think will get more into gaming and like playing himself than my oldest will, but we'll see. That they can write their stories. But they really wanted to watch me play Super Mario World when I started playing it. They loved Yoshi, and so I blitzed the game because we were all sick the other day, and I completed. How many worlds did I complete? I'm at 80. My count's like 84, I think.
Okay.
I think there's 96.
Yeah, so you're basically done with it.
Yeah, I didn't do all the Star Road, and I didn't go to Special yet. That's pretty much it. Other than that, I think I did all the red secret paths that I could in like the main world.
God, I love that game so much.
I love it so much too.
I
was having fun. Like there was a couple that I couldn't remember exactly how to do the secret for, and then there was one particular Cheese Bridge was giving me trouble. That's the one where you have to go under.
Oh, that's right.
To get the secret one, right? So I'm trying to get under there, and I'm trying to do it as Cape Mario. I'm having trouble because I've never been super great at controlling the cape, like especially like a dive and then to like actually come back up.
Forth, yeah.
So what I had forgotten that I used to do, and maybe this is what you did too, I don't know. I would take a Yoshi with me all the way to the end, and yeah, you'd go under, and then you leave Yoshi behind. You're like, sorry, Yoshi.
Yeah, there's actually been turned into a meme because of poor Yoshi's sacrifice.
Is that right?
Yeah. There was a video for a while where like Mario would like try to reach like a flagpole and he would like jump off, and while he's like floating towards the flagpole and Yoshi's falling down, Mario just turns around and gives him the finger and then reaches the flagpole.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, so Super Mario World, I remember finding the one that's in World 2 where it's like just a power-up area, right? You find it off the ghost house.
Top secret area.
Yeah, that was like the closest thing to like God mode that you could have in a Mario game, because it's just like, really? I can just go get whatever power-up I want? And I think there's a Yoshi there too, right? Or no?
Yep, so there's a Yoshi, and then there's, on each side, there's 2 blocks that can give you items. So on the one side, it would be flower, and on the other side, it would be feather. Of course, mushroom if you don't have either one. But yeah, in the middle you have Yoshi.
Because
and then of course, if you come with Yoshi, you get an extra life. And if you really felt the need to, you could just keep going. And I did this as a kid. I didn't do it this time, but like as a kid, sometimes I would go in there and I'd be like, all right, get my extra life and leave, and then do it again. And I would get like just a ton of lives. And I'd be like, all right, I'm good to go.
It was definitely like it felt like such like a cheat code in a series where cheat codes didn't really exist.
Correct. Yeah.
Like it was such a great discovery as a kid. And
but it's also in the spirit of like the Super Mario Brothers original, where like you have the warp pipes and that kind of thing. They were not a cheat code there.
There's secrets. But there's always been secrets in Mario.
Is the thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but this one just felt like it wasn't just like a warp pipe. It was like, all right, you can just power up however you want without having to find the power-ups in the level. It felt like the next step, you know?
Sure.
And it was also in the second game, I guess, where there was like a hub world. So it's like, all right, I know I have a tough level. Let me go all the way back to this other world. And all the worlds were connected, so you could just like walk right through it and get back to there, power up, and then go up with your 99 lives and Yoshi and 2 feathers. So it's like, yeah, we're good to go. Let's attack this.
Yeah.
But
we had a good time though. My kids were really having a fun time with that.
So anything else you were playing?
Well, we talked last week about, and this is the last game that I'll highlight for you, but it does tie into what we were talking about last week with like the deals and everything. I looked it over and I decided ultimately, because I don't typically buy physical copies of games anymore. I do have the disc drive on my PlayStation, so I can, but I typically reserve that for like if I'm going to borrow a game from the library, then at least I got that. So otherwise, I do like to own, or the digital license, digital copy, what have you.
Sure.
So I was looking at the PlayStation Store. That's the only way, of course, you can get the digital copies. I'm like, all right, what are the deals that I like best out of here? And as much as I really wanted Horizon Zero Dawn, I didn't think $40 was the ideal price for me. So I said, okay, I'm going to wait. And I opted for Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, $30 price.
And how are you liking it?
I'm having a good time. I played through... I decided to go chronological in the story.
Honestly, that's the way that I do it with the movies these days, is I will start with episode 1 and then go all the way through, like including Rogue One, including Solo, including, I mean, I haven't done this yet.
I haven't done a playthrough. I haven't done a movie watch like that, I don't think, ever.
I haven't done it yet, but now
there,
future watch throughs that do chronological will include Obi-Wan.
Sure.
It will include The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, which, is half unfortunate, but half awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to include the full saga. It's starting to become closer to the MCU than just like, all right, these are 9 movies I need to watch. Now it's like, all right, you got all these TV shows you need to watch too. And
for better and worse, I think.
I'm only 3 episodes into Andor, but I'm excited to finish that. But yeah,
I actually just started Andor. I'm 2 episodes in, but I'm having trouble getting into it.
It's a slow burn at first, and the episode, it's either 3 or 4 that I'm on, that it's like, all right, we're starting to pick up a little bit here.
They released the first 3 at one time, I know, so I'm kind of giving myself... I'm going to watch it anyway. I'm not going to abandon it. It would have to offend me, I think, to kick me out, but I'm already telling myself, okay, get through episode 3, then maybe start forming the way you feel about the show in some way at all. So I'm trying to be patient. And
also, I'm giving it that benefit of the doubt because so many people at the end of the season were like, this is one of the best things Star Wars has ever done.
I know, I've heard really great things. So I'm also trying to tell myself that there's that too. But I'm also trying to not, buy in to the hype.
Yeah, you don't want to get too hyped up.
This is stupid, guys. What the heck are you thinking?
Yeah, because then you start getting that, the MMA fighter thing where it's, all right, it's me against the world. I'm going to be contrarian.
Yeah, that'll happen. But no, it's so Lego Star Wars. I played through Phantom Menace. I like it. I like the way this is. It was really quick to play through the whole story of the game, and it definitely felt much more connected than any other Lego game that I've ever played that was playing through a narrative, Mm-hmm. It wasn't just oh, you dip into this part of the story experience and all that. And they're much more quick hit too, which is nice because a lot of times you could spend 20 minutes playing the same portion of the same level of the Lego game. And I'm like, I love Lego games. I've played a lot of Lego games, Brian.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. If you look at my trophy list, you'll see how many I've platinumed, and it's a lot. But I am definitely you get a little exhausted after playing a lot of these games and playing these 20-minute sessions of it. It's you know what? I actually got halfway through the movie in 20 minutes. And it felt brisk. It was really good. I really enjoyed. I'm enjoying the experience a lot.
So let me ask you this.
Job.
This is a new format for the Lego games, obviously. Yeah. I think it's a really great direction for the future of this series because I think that the old version was good for the time that they existed in. Now this feels like a modernization of the Lego franchise where it's kind of the camera's behind you. It's more of a third-person action game than an isometric, almost platforming puzzle with a little bit of action mixed in, which is
Sure.
what the old ones are. What adaptation would you like to see them do? Whether it could even be one of the existing licenses like Batman or Marvel. What would you like to see them release Lego blank, and then it could be an adaptation of a movie or a TV series or something completely new?
I'm just going to use my default answer that I've been telling Traveler's Tales about for years, which was Ninja Turtles.
Oh yeah,
Lego used to have the Ninja Turtle license. They didn't have it long. That was my next
question.
But they did have it, and when they had it, I would tell them, "You should do this." And obviously I'm their boss, so I expect them to do what I tell them to. So they've been insubordinate. But no, I was just, man, this would have been a great opportunity. We haven't had a good we haven't had a good Ninja Turtle game in a while. I was like, this would be good because you can have up to 4 people playing as the turtles. I thought it'd be fantastic, and it didn't really come to fruition. They don't have the license anymore, so it's not really a feasible thing.
So I've got 2 for you.
Okay, what do you got?
One I think is realistic. Actually, no, I think they're both realistic, to be honest. Nintendo's been licensing out their properties a lot lately. Like we've got
Sure.
Hyrule Warriors, we've got Mario plus Rabbids. We've talked about this. What if Nintendo and Lego leveraged the Lego Super Mario sets that they have? Like, how like there are Lego Mario sets that you can buy.
Sure.
There's like 30 different sets to choose from. What if we got a Lego Mario game?
It feels exceptionally meta, by the way.
It does, but you could leverage some of the Mario Maker mechanics to build levels and stuff like that out of Legos. You could do all kinds of cool stuff with it. The aesthetic would work well, kind of play off of Mario Maker and make it a Lego thing. Like we've already gotten Mario Maker 2, which is phenomenal, but it didn't sell super well. Slap the Lego brand onto it and, create a bunch of Lego style, or just make a Lego Mario game and then have make it so that the stage creation is not the centerpiece like it is in Mario Maker. Make it like a side mode.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be fun.
I mean, it's obviously an interesting concept, and it's not one that is unrealistic. The question is, because obviously they make these things multi-platform, are they going to make a game that's Nintendo exclusive? Nintendo, I imagine, would probably have to make it worth their while.
Yeah, I mean, they did it with other games like Mario plus
sure,
Rabbids.
maybe they would, but that's obviously a wrinkle to that idea compared to something that, again, they can put out to literally every platform, and that does include phones and computer and everything. But
also keep in mind that the Switch is the highest selling platform of any of the consoles that are out right now.
Oh, sure, absolutely, but they can have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah, but I would imagine that a Mario game would sell exceptionally well for them.
What's your other idea, though?
Lego Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just start early on, go all the way through the MCU. I know that's a huge, ambitious
be similar
project.
to kind of what they've done, because they had like the Lego Avenger game.
Yeah,
but maybe they would do it more in the way they did the Skywalker Saga here, where it's
or maybe
it's
just
a
do the
much
Infinity
bigger...
Saga.
Okay,
like Lego Marvels of Infinity Saga. Start with Captain Marvel. Or Captain America, the First Avenger. Do chronological, or you can do it in movie release order, whatever you want. Like, just choose which one you want to do. Captain America would be the first chronological, then Captain Marvel, then I believe Iron Man would be next, as far as the Infinity Saga, and then just go all the way through, all the way up to Infinity War, Endgame, and Spider-Man No Way Home. Or Far From Home, I mean.
I would go as far as to say that there's a decent chance that just happens.
You think that's
going to
happen?
Just make that game.
I would...
It falls in the wheelhouse of the properties that they use and like to use, and the directions they like to go in. So I couldn't see why that couldn't happen.
Yeah, I would be a day one buyer of that, because I've been wanting like a good like MCU style game, because we've gotten a few things that's like, all right, here's the officially licensed Captain America game, and here's like they did Iron Man 1 and 2, and then they did that really bad Thor game. But after that, they pretty much stopped. And that's why I hung on to the Avengers game for so long. Because I was like, all right, this is the closest thing I've had to like a AAA game where I'm controlling all these heroes and fighting enemies that I know. But then the game just it fell off in such a harsh way. And they didn't give it the support that it needed, or the format that it needed, in terms of like, we're going to give you updates. All right, well, it's going to be like once every 6 months. And also we're going to throw a lot of like live service BS into it to make it worse. But like, I think that if they could do a game like that, where it's just a straightforward, not live service game, like, you can buy DLC, maybe like all those Marvel games have DLC. Like I think there was like an Ant-Man and the Wasp DLC that came out for one of the Lego Marvel superhero games. And it was just a really great experience. I'd love to see that format modernized and adapted to the MCU movies that we all know and love.
Sure. I mean, like I said, I could entirely see this happening. So
now, granted, I think it's 9 movies for the Skywalker saga, plus maybe some Mandalorian content thrown in there for like DLC. This would be, I think, 23 movies for the Infinity Saga.
I imagine they would have to find a way to streamline it in a different manner, other than, maybe they split it into several games, but I don't think
phase
that would
1,
be the goal.
phase 2.
So I think if they got creative, they could do it in a way that was a little bit like maybe not every movie has to be dwelt upon like the entire movie in the same way that you would the Skywalker saga, because they're all 9 pieces of a whole that's telling all the same character stories more or less, in some way.
Yeah.
It's a little like, do you need to do 5 different areas for Ant-Man by any chance? Maybe you can get away with just doing a portion of it.
Yeah, I mean, but there also could be some cool Ant-Man style stuff, like because it's a heist movie first and foremost.
Sure,
so there could
that
be
could
some
be the
cool,
centerpiece.
like heist stuff. Yeah, that's fair.
I think they could get away with just doing like 2 or 3, maybe, or even just 1, depending on which movie it is. And then kind of, because those are grand scheme smaller elements to the Infinity Saga, and I think you're suggesting that they focus on that. Maybe they would play up those elements more heavily.
Yeah, and if you want to go with a more realistic, more accomplishable thing, why don't they just adapt the Dark Knight trilogy?
Yes,
that would be cool.
Yes,
the new Lego format applied to the Dark Knight trilogy. There we go. We covered all 3 of my wish list items now. So there we go.
I like it. This is good.
We've already talked about what I'm playing, which was God of War Ragnarok and Marvel Snap.
Of course, yes.
And I also played a few games that aren't out yet that I can't talk about until at least next week. So we'll just have to move on from there. The only thing I wanted to touch on with the gaming news, because it was a fairly quiet week given the holiday.
Sure.
But late on Wednesday, or I guess early on Wednesday, but I didn't have a chance to hop on and write about it until late on Wednesday. It was Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which, has gotten some polarizing impressions and reviews given the performance problems. I gave it an 8.25, and I stand by that number. I think it's a great game, or good games that are brought down by their tech issues, but not defined by them.
Okay.
Whereas
I've heard a lot of complaints about this.
The tech issues are bad. Don't get me wrong. Like the open world is a problem in terms of like just it doesn't run well. But so much about that game works so well that I'm able to look past it, even though I can't ignore it. That said, it doesn't seem to matter very much because Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is the best launch in Nintendo history. The 3-day weekend, it sold 10 million copies.
That dwarfs the impressive numbers that God of War was putting out as well, because Sony was touting them.
10 million. That is, that's absurd. That is just an absurd sales number. And again, it's the most successful 3-day sales period in Nintendo history, which think about all the games Nintendo has put out, all the successes Nintendo has had over the years. That's unbelievable.
Now, how does that work entirely? Because
combined sales.
So it's combined Scarlet or Violet.
Yeah. So if somebody bought Scarlet, somebody bought Violet, somebody bought both.
Right.
They all count. Or
if I bought both, that counts as 2.
Correct.
Okay.
But like, how many people are doing that realistically? Unless it's for like, all right, I'm buying one for one kid, one for the other.
I'll bet you that happens a lot more than you think, though, dude.
But not to the point where it's going to influence it that much.
I don't know, but I wouldn't say necessarily yes or no on that, but I will say it's not like Pokemon this is not new to Pokemon. They've been doing this for 20 plus years. So, the fact that other games in the Pokemon series have done, 2 different games and they're selling, concurrently, you're still comparing them. It's still better. So it's still impressive.
For comparison, Pokemon Sword and Shield, which was the last mainline entry in the Pokemon series, that same time frame, it sold 6 million. So this was, 10 million versus 6 million. So that's a big upgrade.
Yeah. I'm not even trying to take away what it accomplished is still a staggering number and a boon for the company. Good for them. Doesn't help me, but that's nice.
But yeah, so that was really the only news that I wanted to cover before we switched over to the MMA side of things.
Yeah, I think we can get over to the fighting here.
But we didn't have a whole lot of news really coming out outside of the events. But there was one piece of unfortunate news that we should touch on a little bit prior to jumping into talking about the PFL championships and the UFC Fight Night in Orlando.
Yeah, and we can kind of save the greater conversation for this next week, just because we're almost a week removed from the news, but also we're about a week away from where it's going to factor in again. And that was Yuri Prohaska, the UFC light heavyweight champion, no more. He vacated his belt in the wake of apparently a very devastating shoulder injury. He willingly, he says, decided to give up the belt. And so now he won't be fighting next week on pay-per-view. He also will, not only him, but Glover Teixeira, his original opponent, will not be fighting either. But there will still be a championship fight, and it will be contested between two combatants who were on the pay-per-view as well. Highly skilled, one a former champion. Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev will now be for the undisputed, as they call it. There's no dispute there. Title at 205 pounds.
They are both incredibly worthy opponents. They
Absolutely.
They both deserve to fight for the championship. I think a lot of people have pegged Magomed Ankalaev as a potential future champion, and Jan Blachowicz obviously a former champion. But man, it just sucks to, one, lose Yuri for seemingly at least a year, maybe even longer. Two, lose Glover on this card, because it just sucks because, he's getting up there in age. Like, when is he going to get a chance to fight for the belt again? And also, like, we're probably never going to get that rematch now to the best fight of this year, probably.
No, it does seem like that's going to be an elusive fight now. We'll see, but I mean, that's going to be up to Glover how long he wants to fight. But yeah, I guess, again, I don't want to dwell on this because we can talk more next week, but it sounds like Glover he was hoping that he would get the chance to fight for the title maybe at a future event, but the UFC machine ain't going to just skip an opportunity to have a championship fight when they're promoting it. So it's not that they're promoting the two fighters going against each other. They're promoting a championship fight, and whoever's going to be ready is going to be ready. And unfortunately, Glover was not with the program of that. And so he is left on.
And rightfully so. Magomed Ankalaev is an incredibly different fighter.
Yeah.
From a Yuri Prohaska. So, like, in terms of preparation, that's turning his entire game plan on its head, and in a 2-week stretch.
Yeah, it's not the same. If it had been against Jan, and that was kind of where they were hoping to go, I think it makes a little more sense on Glover's part to take the fight. That's still up to him. He would still have to decide that, but at least it's a past opponent. It's stylistically not redonkulously different.
Yeah.
So who knows? I mean, that's up to him, but it sounds like they were more dead set on having Ankalaev be in the title fight, which to me, I don't understand what the UFC really loves about him, because it's not like he has the most aesthetically pleasing style. He has not really delivered for them in terms of entertainment value when he's been featured in these, headlining fights lately or anything like that. And again, he's world class, and there's a decent chance he's the best 205 fighter on the planet right now anyway, even if he fought Yuri. But it's still it just surprised me that he's the one that they're trying to focus on, because he's more of a sporting choice than an entertainment choice, and that's not the way the UFC typically goes. So
yeah,
very weird. There's sometimes you just can't read this company.
And also, I just sincerely hope that Yuri Prohaska is okay, because we've seen how shoulder injuries are just devastating. We just saw it a few weeks ago with TJ Dillashaw. He had surgery on his shoulder on both of his shoulders, right, during his suspension, and he came back, and what happened? It immediately popped right out. And it's like, God, like I really hope that this is one of those situations where it's not something that becomes a chronic problem for him, because I would put him as, I mean, in addition to seemingly, he seems like a pretty okay guy overall based on what we've seen of him. He also is maybe the second most exciting fighter in the UFC today. And
he's up there.
It sucks to lose him, and especially when he's seemingly just finding his stride in the UFC, and he just had probably the fight of the year against Glover Teixeira. We're about to get that rematch, but then
for my money, one of the best fights of all time.
Yeah, and it just sucks to throw the brakes on all the momentum that he has picked up in his short stint with the UFC so far.
But look, all of that does suck. I do think that when he does return, the world will not forgotten about him because he is just too striking a figure and just quite a character. So I don't think he's the type that we're just going to have forgotten about. Once he comes back, it'll be a big deal.
I don't know. I just hope he's the same fighter.
Sure. No, I mean, you always hope that too. But yeah, we can go deeper into that conversation next week because that's for next week. We've got some, more pressing things to address here. And that was the other day, the PFL Championship. We talked about the fact that this was a pay-per-view event. It was for $49.99. You said hell no. You were not going to be paying that price. That's fine. I was not able to cover it live anyway. PFL provided me a code to be able to watch it as a media member, which was helpful because I ended up writing a story off of it as well for New York Post. So that was helpful to definitely have access to that. But yeah, $49.99 I understand was kind of a steep price for people. Having said that, I mean, I gotta say, it really delivered.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it really did. I thought it felt like a pay-per-view. And actually, they actually made it feel that way. PFL is notorious for like absolutely terribly paced fight nights and that kind of thing. And even the prelims the other day were just interminable. But once they hit the pay-per-view, man, fight after fight after fight, it was done really well. But also they gave enough breathing room to like some of the stories that they're able to get out of these, because it's a very human thing for these people to work for a year. Well, obviously they're working for a lot longer than a year, but for this particular goal, they're working for a year. And that release of winning $1 million at the end, it's pretty incredible. Some of the stories that you kind of get out of it and the emotions. So they did a fantastic job. I think everything that PFL could have hoped for to happen, and I do include Kayla Harrison in there. And I'm not saying that they wanted Kayla Harrison to lose, but everything that could have happened benefited PFL. We have no idea how much they sold and how many people actually watched. That's for them to know, and that's for them to decide whether it was a financial success. But otherwise, I think they kind of knocked it out of the park.
Here's my takeaway from it, because everybody says like, "Oh, this was an amazing card." If you could go into that night knowing you were going to get that quality of a card, the $50 was probably worth it.
Yeah, but yeah, dude, this really would have been.
I've watched the PFL championships before when they were just like free on ESPN Plus. And they haven't delivered in that level. So it's like, it's impossible to know. So that's why I was like, hell no on this. But if I knew that like we were going to get like this level of quality fights, then yeah, it might've been worth it. That said, how much of a loss was it that they basically diverted a lot of eyes from one of their best cards ever because they locked it behind a paywall? Like, how much would it have done if this was just free streaming on ESPN Plus on a day where I think a lot of people were sitting around their house with family looking for something to watch?
Well, I will say this. There are a lot of people in the MMA community who, let's say, are more okay with watching fights that they didn't pay for, that they accessed by means which are not encouraged by this program nor by the hosts thereof. But having said that, they find a way and they watch the fights anyway. So there's probably a lot of people who still care about the PFL product, that watched the PFL product and really enjoyed the PFL product. And by talking about it themselves, maybe in social media, helped promote the PFL product. And it could still be a long-term win for them. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky thing. I'm not talking
about the MMA community. I'm talking about just like Uncle Joe sitting on the couch and being like, "Oh yeah, we have this ESPN Plus app. Let's see what's on there. I'm looking for some sports." And then
I believe Uncle Joe is going to watch college football that night anyway.
That's entirely possible. But on a Friday night, like some fights some bloodlust following some turkey. Not a bad thing. Not a bad combo.
I don't know. I mean, if they do it the same way that they did it last year, if it's not a pay-per-view, maybe they pace it the way they have in the past, which has not always been a very enjoyable program. Here, they didn't do that. They weren't bogged down by commercials. They didn't do any of that stuff. So I don't know. Maybe it felt different because of the fact that it was on pay-per-view and that they were able to do things a little differently. I don't know. It's kind of tricky.
I know, just sitting on the couch with my dad, like we were just flicking through all the apps, seeing what we wanted to watch, and he was like, "Oh, there's fights on," and I was like, "Yeah, but it's a pay-per-view, and I don't want to pay $50. Do you want to pay $50?" He's like, "No," and I'm like, "All right, let's watch something else." That was basically our conversation that we had, and no, I'm sure that it's something similar to that for a lot of households.
But let me ask you this: like, in theory, if they wanted to do a pay-per-view, what do you think would be a fair number for them to try and put out there that doesn't totally devalue their product, but also is low enough that it gets your dad to be like, yeah, maybe I'll buy it?
Well, it's simple. They shouldn't do pay-per-views because they don't have the pay-per-view draw outside of Kayla Harrison, and now we don't even know if she's a pay-per-view draw at this point.
We don't know if she was a pay-per-view draw to begin with.
Yeah, that's fair. But
we still don't actually know that number, but
we sure tried.
Sure, no, that's true. But I think PFL is still hoping that their product is going to be similar to the UFC in the sense that you're trying to watch for the PFL, the format. You don't care as much about this. Like, the stars are going to bring cachet to the organization in a way that the UFC doesn't need. But also, ultimately, their goal is for you to watch PFL because you want to know who wins the $1 million, not because you want to see if Kayla Harrison can stay unbeaten.
I am watching for the fighters, never the championships.
Sure.
Like, if I turn on a UFC pay-per-view, I'm not like, oh, well, the light heavyweight championship is happening anyway. It's just different fighters. That's fine. Like, I'm like, damn, that I really have to like weigh my decisions now because Yuri and Glover 2 is not on this fight card anymore. It's not like, oh, well, on to the next one with different fighters. It's like, oh, wait, this card is significantly worse because we don't have Yuri and Glover 2. Same thing here. It's like, I'm not watching to see who takes home the $1 million. I'm watching because, like, oh, I really want to see OAM versus Stevie Ray, or I really want to see how Marlon Moraes looks post UFC, which unfortunately didn't go super well for him, from what I understand either. After the second round, anyway.
I'll tell you, man. I think there is something to the idea of watching this because you're curious to see if the think about, like, I'll give you an example before I get like deep into what I'm trying to say. Brendan Loughnane. Mm-hmm. Won the featherweight championship here, right? He is not a star. There's no way to qualify Brendan Loughnane as a star. He is very much a very popular fighter, especially with the Euro MMA crowd. But he is not by any means a star. He does have a very fascinating journey to him. Mm-hmm. And that had the culmination, it had the emotional payoff at the end and everything like that too. There are other fighters that have that as well. And as you watch the season, PFL's hope, now whether they're getting this or not, but PFL's hope is that you're going to invest yourself in some of these people along the way, and that you will care about whose story is going to be completed at the end with the $1 million.
That is a good hope, but I think the realistic part of the way PFL exists in this space is a lot of people are just watching one-off events. A lot of people who aren't like hardcore MMA fans are just going to watch whatever you put out in front of them.
I think that people are watching in general.
that's also fair, but
to be perfectly honest,
the appeal to the PFL is that it is on the app that you already have if you're an MMA fan, because the vast majority of US-based MMA fans have an ESPN Plus subscription because the premier MMA organization calls it its exclusive streaming partner.
PFL,
exactly. But that's the appeal to PFL is it's already on the same app that you have.
All that's good, but we got to switch over here because I want to ask you about the big fallout here is obviously Kayla Harrison. We already mentioned losing the fight here. What is the fallout though? Because this affects a lot of things with PFL and with Kayla Harrison. There's a few things and I don't want to go down the overrated conversation because a lot of people started doing that. That's not really where I'm going here. But what does Kayla Harrison's loss mean for PFL, and what does it mean for Kayla Harrison? That's kind of the heart of this, I think.
So it depends on how Kayla Harrison wants to approach this loss. On the one hand, she could say, you know what, I'm done with the PFL. I want to go try my hand at Bellator or UFC. And those organizations would probably get a discount at this point compared to what they would have gotten last year. I don't know what her contract looks like. What was it, a 2-year contract? Or
She has 2 fights left.
Okay. So I would imagine that she is, being the competitor that she is, she's probably going to want this one back, right? So I think that if she only has 2 more fights and she wants to be done with PFL, which I don't know if she does, I don't know what her internal thought process is, especially coming off of her first professional loss, is she going to want to stay in the organization with the first woman who beat her? If she does, then I think she's going to ask for this one back. She's going to want this fight back. If she doesn't, then she's just going to say, hey, give me 2 fights as quickly as possible. Let's get them over with. And then she's going to want to go off to, I mean, I guess, quote unquote, greener pastures. She's going to want to either go over to Bellator, maybe try to fight Cyborg, get that fight together, or maybe try to go over and say like, hey, UFC, you want to actually try to make a 145-pound division around me? Because Amanda Nunes is basically operating in this space alone at this point. Like, there's very little, there's not any evidence of a 145-pound division aside from the fact that there's a belt that exists for it at this point. And
I was say my guess for Kayla Harrison is that she's not going to just be like, all right, give me 2 bodies so I can get my contract up. I think she's probably going to feel a lot of hunger to try and get another fight with Larissa Pacheco as quick as she's able to get that happen, maybe get another chance at it, because she's done with the season format. Like that's the end of it. Yeah. So if she fights Pacheco again, it is going to be like in this quote unquote pay-per-view division that they have in PFL, which is such a stupid name, but they keep using that buzzword. Anyway, I imagine she's going to want that pretty badly, but I think they're going to be chasing the biggest fights that they can possibly make for her. And I don't know what that entails. I don't know if that means, is Aspen Ladd a big fight? I don't know. Or is she just going to go into the season format? I don't know. Will Larissa Pacheco go back in the season format? I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns here. Can they somehow find a way to get Chris Cyborg over there? And it would probably mean a co-promotion thing, because Cyborg has not appreciated the way PFL talks about her and the executives of that organization. And I can understand why.
I've got to say, I was waiting. Like, there's certain moments where you're like, oh, what's this fighter going to say about this? Like when Izzy lost to Pereira, you're like, all right, what's John Jones going to say about this? Because of course he's going to chime in. I think a lot of people were waiting for Cyborg's tweets about Kayla Harrison losing because of how they've had some animosity on social media.
Well, they're just hyping a fight.
And Cyborg was very supportive of Kayla Harrison. I don't know if you saw the tweets, but
I did. Yeah. I mean, I think Chris Cyborg is a classy enough woman to put it out there that she's not going to try and rub Kayla Harrison's nose in her loss. I think she appreciates that Kayla Harrison is a terrific fighter.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing. I think game recognizes game there. So,
and especially since, Cyborg knows, like she said in her tweet, she knows what it's like to go undefeated for a long time and then suffer a loss that nobody really, I mean, I guess people expected that the Nunes fight would be a war, but they didn't expect Cyborg to lose in the way that she did. Just like I think a lot of people did not expect Kayla to lose to Larissa Pacheco in their 3rd fight together. And
make no mistake, there's money to be made still between Harrison and Cyborg, wherever it is, however it happens. So, again, I don't think it's on Cyborg's brand to, try to she's not going to make herself look bad. I think and I don't think she did it just because of calculation. I think she just was trying to be like, hey, this sucks, but I feel you,
Yeah. And I don't know. I think that for Kayla Harrison, there's still a lot of money to be made in any organization she goes to. UFC is probably the least likely destination for her at this point. Although,
I would say so.
They do have now Kayla Harrison, who has shown that she's not invincible, and Amanda Nunes, who recently lost to Juliana Pena, even though she did get that loss back in pretty dominant fashion. At the same time, I think that the UFC would be weird if they went out and they're like, all right, well, we've completely ignored the 145-pound division, but let's sign another fighter to it that is very high profile and is going to cost us a lot of money. So I think that Bellator, if she's going to leave the PFL, Bellator would be the number one destination.
I imagine UFC is going to be rapidly getting out of the featherweight, women's featherweight division as quick as they possibly can. I think the only reason Amanda Nunes still has the belt is because there's no reason to take it away from her.
Yeah.
So she'll just be the champion until she retires, and then they'll just fold that belt. That's my guess.
Let's create an atomweight division, please.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. Get that going. But that's a whole another conversation as well. Because I want to wrap up here. Like I said, I'm not feeling good. I kind of want to get this going a little earlier than we typically do. But let's look ahead to this coming weekend with UFC Orlando. It's not Vegas, sir. This is in Orlando.
Thank God.
With Stephen Wonderboy Thompson going against Kevin Holland in what really is one of the deepest fight nights that we've had in a very long time. This is like a throwback fight night, back when they used to be all bangers up and down.
Back when they used to give a shit.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, back when they had to rely on ratings instead of just the contractually obligated payouts from ESPN. So Stephen Thompson versus Kevin Holland, I think that's a pretty solid headliner.
Sure.
I don't think it's the best headliner we've seen this entire year, but it's going to be entertaining.
Fight night, you mean?
Yeah, for a fight night. I think that there's been headliners that I'm more excited for. That said, the rest of this card for a fight night is stacked. And I'm so excited for this one.
So all right, let's give you the rating then. Let's do the rating of the main event. So, since we already established that's not, it's not like a 5-star or 4.5-star you would be implying. So where are you at? 4, 3.5?
I'm between a 3.5 and a 4. I think I'm going to go with a 4 though.
I like it as a 4 too, and the reason being, I think it is gonna deliver. I feel good about it actually delivering on the action here. Mm-hmm. Look, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson isn't known for, let's say high volume fights. They're tactical, but they can be explosive. And I think we'll have a very interesting striking battle with him and Kevin Holland. I don't think Kevin Holland's just going to stand in trade unless he gets some sort of, put it this way. If he somehow gets lulled into the fight that Stephen Thompson wants, that would be bad news, I think, from an entertainment aesthetic standpoint. But I think he'll find a way to get the fight going in the way that he'd more like it a little bit, where he's got to be able to put a little more volume out there. And I think that'd be interesting to see how Stephen Thompson does with that. He doesn't always do the best with that, but I'm curious. I just want to see how this goes. I think it could go a lot of ways. I think it's going to be a fun fight.
I think
I'm
going to
go with 4, and I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad we're aligned there. And then looking at the rest of the card, man, this is a good fight card for a fight night for sure. You can tell that they're we have to sell tickets to this one.
Yeah, they did. That's true. So that's almost like one of the reasons why you have to sit there and say, well, maybe they should get the show out of Vegas now. Even I actually like the Vegas idea, because I like being able to hear the corners. I like that we always get top-notch judging in there. So you say what you want about the judges, but when you do enough shows in, let's say lesser commissioned areas like Virginia or New Mexico, as they were doing right before the pandemic hit, you start to appreciate when they actually get the traveling judges on all the time and on all the fights. It's just so much better. So it's nice to know that. But here, I think that won't be a problem. This card really, you have Tracy Cortez and Amanda Hebos, which I think are two of their more marketable flyweight women. And they're buried deep on the prelims on this one because they can get away with it. There's just so much else above them. I don't want to go listing every single fight, but man, there's some highlights here. I love Jack Hermanson and Roman Dolidze.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fun one. Mateus Nicolau and Matt Schnell.
That's about to go to
flyweight heaven.
And
Barberina is always amazing to watch. Tai Tuivasa is a banger. Rafael Dos Anjos, exactly, against Barberina. I love these
so many
fights.
fan favorites on this as well.
Mm-hmm. Nico Price is always fun.
Mm-hmm.
Darren Elkins, something crazy is going to happen.
I mean, it's just none of these fights are top notch. Like we could headline this. Like, sometimes you
No.
get a card where it's like, wow, like the third highest card on this thing could have been the headliner and it would have been fine. But no,
there are
like
headlining fighters here, but not headlining fights.
Michael Johnson versus Mark Chikadze. Or Chikadze, that's a good fight. Mark Chikadze,
that's deep in the prelims too.
Yeah, that's Clay Guida's on this card. Angela Hill's on this card. Like, there are so many names, and again, not all of them are the best matchups or like the most marketable matchups. I mean, even Yasmin Uruguay is the first fight on this card from what I'm seeing, at least the order I'm seeing, which might be unofficial.
I mean, that looks like what's the bad order, yeah.
Yasmin Uruguay, just so many great names on this card.
So with this whole card in mind here, what do you rate your level of interest in the rest of the Fight Night slate?
I think given the way that I put it, that like there's a lot of names, but not all of them are the best or most marketable matchups, I'm going to go 4.
I'm actually going to go with a 4.5.
Wow.
Because
see, that what prevented me from a 4.5 is it being that like some of the matchups, it's like, all right, well, I want to see that fighter, but like that fight doesn't really do too much for me. Like there's a lot of those situations.
What you have to say to yourself is, what's the bar? Like, what is a 5?
Yeah.
Where are we at for a 5? And then you kind of go down from there.
That's
I think
fair.
5 needs to be, like a card. And we're talking about fight nights. Obviously, we're limiting it to fight nights. Pay-per-views are a different animal when we do our ratings. For a fight night card to have just so many fights that you actually want to watch, that's all I'm really looking for. Like, I can tell you, just kind of checking off the boxes, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's like bare minimum 9 that I'm just like, yep, I'm dialed in. I really want to see how that happens. It doesn't have to be the one that I'm the most looking forward to, but it's just, I'm into them. And we haven't had a whole lot of that with these fight nights lately. So it definitely reaches a different level for me. That's where I'm at.
That's fair. And I can definitely see that as well. Now, I have heard some people on Twitter, and I guess that's the only social media that I've been looking at, but saying that with the loss of Yuri and Glover that we were talking about before, should they move any of these fights, since this card is so stacked, to the next week for the pay-per-view to kind of bolster that card?
Don't cannibalize it.
That was my thought as well. I felt that way as well. But like a lot of people were saying, oh, maybe we move Tuivasa Pavlovich over to the pay-per-view just to kind of get another big name on there, because Tuivasa is a huge fan favorite. But again,
or save your $75. That's okay too.
100%. So
there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you did happen to buy the pay-per-view price.
Yeah.
But did you give a rating for the prelim or the rest of the card? I mean,
yeah, 4.
4, that's right. So yeah,
but okay, I can see 4.5 for sure.
So you're 4.4. I'm 4.5. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what is one other fight on, let's say, the non-headliner? Which of these, crazy amount of fights that I think are at least of interest, which one is the most can't miss for you?
See, we have the opposite problem on this card than we do on most fight night cards, especially Apex fight night cards, where it's like, I don't know, like I guess this one. This one, it's like, all right, well, which of these many. Which of these multitude of fights do we want to? And I'm going to go, it's so hard because I'm like, oh man, Nico Price is fighting, or Darren Elkins is fighting, and the co-main's always a good pick. Or we talk about Nicolau versus Schnell. I'm going to go Tracy Cortez versus Amanda Ribas. I think Amanda Ribas is a fighter I've watched since I got to see her UFC debut live and in person at UFC Minneapolis in 2019. And she fought Emily Whitmire on that card and made pretty easy work of her. And I was like, all right, she might be somebody to watch. And sure enough, she has made herself a player, if nothing else. I mean, I know she's had some setbacks in her trek to title contendership.
Sure.
But, Tracy Cortez, I think it's a winnable fight for Amanda Ribas, but it should be a fun fight. And that's why I'm marking that. And I guess also I'm having a little bit of a chip on my shoulder of highlighting this one because it is buried so deep in the prelims.
Sure. No, I mean, that's fair. This really is a card that, like, it feels like you ought to be tuning in early, not because you're compelled to, but because there's just some good fights here that, like, you're going to have a good time with.
Absolutely.
And it does start probably around that mark for me, if the bad order that we're looking at on Tapology is correct. But yeah, for me, if I'm picking one other fight that I can't miss, it is Hermansson and Dolidze. I like both of these fighters. I think they come to bang, and I think there is some level of importance here for the division too. Hermansson still hasn't gotten all the way up to that championship level. Dolidze's on the come up. You know, if Hermansson gets a win, maybe a couple wins, he might be able to get himself into that conversation for a championship that he's been trying to get to. And Dolidze, you keep winning, you get a win like Jack Hermansson under your belt. You know you belong.
Oh, for
so
sure.
I'd be curious to see if he can keep rising and give the UFC another Georgian contender that they also have in Merab Dvalishvili.
Yeah, that's a very good fight that I think a lot of people could overlook just because Hermansson's kind of existed in where he's like on the cusp of fighting for a title, but never quite got there.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of like in like that middleweight ranking range where we know he's a good fighter, but he's not like the Izzies or the Whitakers of the world, right? Where
not yet. And Dolidze isn't quite the name that for like the casual fan that he is for the people who are in the know. So it's yeah, and part of that is just because he is on the come up. You know, he's got a couple wins over recently Kyle Dawkins, who is also on this card, and Phil Haas. Those are some big wins. He does have the loss to Trevin Giles. That's his only loss on his record. It's a decision. It's not like I don't think he got outclassed in that fight. If I remember, there was actually an argument to be made that he won the fight, if I'm thinking of the right fight. So this is a guy who I think is going places. He's 34. It's not like he's young, but he's also still early in his MMA career. So I think he's got a good run in him. If he can keep climbing, maybe I don't know what his ceiling is. Like I'd like to see.
Yeah, lots of great fights on this card, and I can't wait. I'm hoping that no plans crop up for me, so I can actually sit and watch this entire card. So that's what I'm crossing my fingers for. So I'm going to try to start marking my calendar now of being like, hey, I'm watching this fight card on Saturday because this is bangers from start to finish pretty much.
I'm pulling for you, but yeah, I think we should wrap it up. I'm
Your voice is cutting out.
I'm getting to the end of what I can do here physically. So yeah, that's our show. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you found us. And while you are at it, would you kindly follow our social handles at Brian P. Shea and at Scott_Fontana on Twitter and Instagram.
And then you can reach us in more formal capacities with questions, feedback, topics you'd like to hear about at groundandpwnepod@gmail.com or at groundandpwned on Twitter. Until next time, enjoy the fights, enjoy the games, and we will talk to you next week.